Afternoon. I'm going to call to order the DDSN Finance and Audit Committee meeting. It is 3:30 on the dot, on the nose, and I will read a statement of announcement. The meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the March 8th, 2022 Finance and Audit Committee meeting was distributed March 4th, 2022 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. Americans with Disabilities Act. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance. All right, so can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Barry?
Second.
Great. So agenda is adopted as presented. The next item on our agenda are the minutes from the January 19th, 2022 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Minutes are approved as written. The next item on our agenda is the financial approval and threshold report. Candace Golson is going to lead us in that discussion.
Good afternoon. We have two items that requires approval. The first item, we're going to ask that we get approval from the Finance Audit Committee meeting. It's a nurse, temp agency nurse that submitted an offer to MMO. We've got other ones approved. It's a fixed price bid with the fixed rates. We currently have about 19 contracts that's established through this fixed price bid. So it's a routine bid process for this particular, for temp nurses, for LPNs and RNs.
So it's a temp agency that we're.
Yes, so we submit a solicitation for fixed price bid for temp agencies to agree to our rates or our maximum. We have a cap of maximum rates of $40 for RNs and $32.50 for LPNs. They are agreeing to those rates, and they're just wanting to get approved and provide nurses. It doesn't guarantee that they're going to be used, but it's just a pool of nurses for us to be able to issue POs for when we need to seek out more nurses.
Right. So you just want us to give you that approval, this committee to give you the approval.
Correct.
And it would be, I guess, not necessarily required to go to the commission.
Correct.
So because of the nature of
Yes.
the request. Okay. Well, if anyone doesn't have any questions on this particular one, then can I get a motion to approve their request?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so
And the second one we have, it's a project, CPIP project, for a coastal center campus-wide fire alarm replacement. Bids were received on January 18th, and it was actually advertised in Skibo. And it was advertised in Skibo on November 22nd. So the bids came in on January 18th. They received 3 bids. 3 bids were received, and in the packet shows you who submitted a bid. One bid was non-responsive and the other one for Farmers Construction was deemed, they withdraw their bid. So the next bidder was Hiller Systems, and the base bid is $313,762. And so are we asking, Andrew, for their financial
Yeah,
approval here?
this would eventually need full commission approval, so we're just bringing it to the finance committee to step up.
So when we put out, I guess, an RFP, right?
This is a construction, this is with the OESE manual construction. So it wasn't an RFP, it was just a bid, straight bid. A request for proposal was not the form of solicitation sourcing.
So how did we get 3 different people to submit?
So SCIBO is the South Carolina Business Opportunity that we use to publish that there is something out for bid. So all the contractors are getting notice that there is a bid to submit an offer. So we provide them with a bid date and they submit their offer, but before that deadline. And that's why we got 3 bids. And what happens is you evaluate those bids and you deem them responsive and responsible. And there's a whole evaluation process. So one of the vendors or contractors were deemed non-responsive. During the bid process, on the other contractor, there were some discrepancies on the bid after evaluation, and he could not hold his pricing. So therefore, that will be grounds for withdrawal, and it was submitted in writing, and it was withdrawal. And then so we go to the next bidder to deem them responsive and responsible.
So SCIBO, basically, they just publish this, and then you go to the, if you don't go to the publication list, you won't see it, because they're not gonna individually send it to you.
Correct.
Okay.
One thought that comes to mind is when we don't really have 2 competing, when we get down to 1 because 2 are either non-responsive or not ideal because of the pricing that you said, do we seek additional bids just to have a little bit more of a?
Not unless the vendor is deemed non-responsible, responsible. Per the procurement code, we've already met our requirements by soliciting in SCIBO. We receive bids, even if we receive 1 bid after publication in SCIBO, we've done our due diligence as far as the procurement process.
Based on standards, that's within reason of standards.
Yes, sir. In fact, we had this kind of budgeted at about close to $400,000, so it's actually pretty well within our
So they
budget.
came in under, okay.
All right, okay. So no one else has any other questions? Barry, are you good?
Well, that's not bad. I'm not gonna belabor the point except to say that what you're getting at, Robin, is that we don't need to be taking 1 bid, even if we can legally do that. And we don't need to be doing that, not for this kind of money. And so I'm not saying that this particular contract needs to be stopped because of it, but in the future, we need to reevaluate how we do that. Not what they're saying is you can legally do it this way, but the right way to do it is to at least have 2 bids on this kind of money. And if you, and at least to put it out twice to see if you can get 2 bids and let people, and have some way to let people know that there is an opportunity to bid for those that do that, so they can make sure they saw what the opportunities were. Because it just doesn't look good for us to be approving bids that have only 1 bid. 1 viable bid that we can accept.
Per the procurement code, we've already done that.
I know per the procurement code, that's not what I said. I know per legally you can do that. What I'm saying is we shouldn't do it. I'm not saying you can't legally do it.
So with that being said, even with grievance, the the vendor that we deem responsive and responsible, they would have grievance if we do not have an award. That gives them grounds to protest. So
They
that
could
goes
protest
to,
all they wanted to if we went to somebody and said, we're just going out through it again to see if we can find another bid. And after that, they can protest all they want. All we're doing is doing our due diligence as a commission.
Okay, but what I'm hearing is we did a takeoff. Okay, as long as we do a takeoff, and that takeoff, our number was around 400,000. They came in under that number. So did you approve their takeoff standards?
I was happy with the price, yes, sir.
Okay, but I'm talking about the people that did the takeoff. They were your people or out
No,
inside?
this was, I did it personally. I did the design on the system.
Okay.
I'm talking about for future reference more than now.
Right.
Okay, so, I guess for today, can we get a motion, can I get a motion to approve the request?
So
for
moved.
The Coastal
Second,
Center campus-wide fire alarm. Okay, all right, motion is approved, and we'll send it to a commission vote next week. So, thank you. All right. The next item is going to be a fee-for-service update for Lori, and I don't even see Lori. Is she on the computer?
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you guys are well aware that we've been plugging away towards a March 1 go live date for fee for service. Just a couple of days before March 1st, the Department of Health and Human Services decided to delay direct Medicaid billing until April 1st. It was really out of an abundance of caution to make sure that the provider network was fully prepared and enrolled to submit Medicaid claims and get them back. Even though that happened though, we went ahead with the full go live date of March 1st for full fee for service. So during the month of March, providers will not bill Medicaid directly for their services, but we will do a full reconciliation. So if you guys will recall, in January and February, we paid out the band payments. At the end of closeout of billing, we looked at the band payments versus the billing revenue. For providers who had billing revenue over the band payment, we paid them the difference. For providers who had band payments billings less than the band payments, we held them harmless. For the month of March, we'll do a full reconciliation. So the band payments were issued or will be issued. One was sent out, I think, late last week, and then they'll get their second payment at mid-month. When billing closes out for March, if the provider's billings are less than the band payment, they will have to refund that money to DDSN. If they're more than the band payment, then we will do a full, we will give them the difference. So other than that, we continue to move forward. When I met with you guys last time, we talked about problems with provider enrollment and people not kind of being completely enrolled. So we've done a lot of work alongside HHS to try to work with providers to make sure that their enrollment applications are complete and that they're ready to submit claims on April 1st. I do not foresee there being any other extension. So it looks like on April 1st, we will be full fee for service and our providers will be direct billing Medicaid for their services.
All right. Lori, how many providers have enrolled?
So the last, and enrolled is kind of a moving target because there's really two steps to Medicaid provider enrollment. There's receipt of your Medicaid provider ID, meaning you have your MPI, you have your taxonomy codes, you've applied and your application's been reviewed and it's accepted. But then there's a little delay between getting that information and the providers receiving a login to the Medicaid web tool, which is a way that it's Medicaid's kind of free option to submit claims. So there tends to be like a 10-day delay between when you're fully enrolled and when you receive your Medicaid provider ID. People that are fully enrolled, meaning they could submit a claim tomorrow. I believe the last number that I got was around 60. But we have many people that are kind of in that middle process where they've completed the enrollment, but they have not yet received their login for the Medicaid web tool.
I have a question.
Sure.
Those 5 no's, have any of them changed their mind?
The
Providers.
The providers who have not applied at all, is that?
In the last meeting, I think you had referenced that there were 5.
It wouldn't probably.
Right. So there are 5 providers who initially had a contract with DDSN. They do not have any open authorizations. So what that means is they're not currently providing services. Those providers will not direct enroll and direct bill. And they are providers of things like respite and adult companion. So it's not the residential providers, the day service providers, and that kind of thing.
So they were always a specialized provider anyway, and they've just decided not to continue, right?
Right. And the thing, Commissioner Malfris, the thing is, like, they were on the provider list, but they weren't actively serving anybody. So we have not had any provider who has an open service authorization, meaning they're delivering the service right now to say we're not enrolling with Medicaid.
Okay, that sounds good. You need to mention that again at the meeting next week.
Absolutely. I will also have updated numbers at the meeting next week, so that I can give you a full report on where we are. But I can assure you that, we're doing an awful lot of work to make sure that when we get to April 1st, we don't have anybody who is unable to submit a claim, because we really want to make sure that there's not a cash flow issue. These providers are going to get their last band payment and they can't wait 40 days until they get payment. So we want people to be able to submit claims right away on April 1st so that they can get paid on a weekly basis.
All right, so basically what you're going to do, you're going to pin that to writing, am I correct, to those 5? So that there's no mix up later on?
No, we have it in writing from them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions, Barry or Eddie, on fee for service for Lori?
Good.
No, I don't have any more.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lori. Is that it for you, Lori?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is the financial update from Nancy Robock.
Good afternoon. So the financial update is the spending plan versus the actual expenditures, and at this point, it's as information only, as it will be approved or accepted in the commission meeting next week. Our spending plan was approved at $851.1 million. Our cash expenditures at DDSN is $475.2. The wash that happens at HHS with the providers doing direct bill at $124.8 million, less the $30.5 million state match that we paid, nets the $94.3. 94.3, and the cash expenditures of $475 million. Or our total expenditures of our spending plan is at $569.6. So that's 66.92% of our expenditures. We are just slightly above where we should be at the end of February.
All right, Mary or Eddie, any questions regarding what's been presented today?
In this section, no, I'm fine.
All right,
I mean, it's gonna be resubmitted anyway for the commission meeting, so. Is that information gonna change before next week, by the way?
No, sir, it will not.
Thank you.
all right, thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Next item, Debbie is going to talk about the 6.29 FMAP update.
Good afternoon. It's actually 6.2%.
Yeah.
Little typo there.
Yeah.
Just to give you a brief update, based off of the memo that Dr. Fry sent out on January 7th, we gave out or were handing out $5 million of FMAP money with stipulations. They had to send in a two-part plan in which they not only would tell us the staffing needs and what they were going to utilize this for, but also what they were going to provide back to DDSN in the event that we asked for information as an audit. Up to date right now, we have 70.5%. $3.5 million has been approved and been sent out. It's gone through accounts payable and everything already. 53.5% of the agencies have been approved, 61 out of 114. With regards to the ones being unapproved, there are 11 boards that still have not sent in anything at this point. 28%, 28% of the people. It's $933,000 that the boards have not requested for funding, and $540,000 or 10.8% for the early intervention and other private providers. And that's as of 9 o'clock this morning.
What was that percentage now again of the ones that did not?
The boards were at 18.6% and 10.8% for the private providers. That's the money piece.
You mentioned something about a certain percentage did not submit. What was that again?
11 boards have not submitted at this point, which equates to 28%.
Any reason why?
I don't know. I've reached out to some. A couple have said that they're waiting for their quarterly commission meeting to get approval of their plan. Other than that, I haven't reached out to all 11 of the boards. I reached out to 3 of them this morning.
So you'll reach out to the others?
Yes, that is.
Are you comfortable with the 3 responses that you did?
I am.
Conversation with?
I am. Certain boards don't meet every month, and they, depending on their board, there's only so much that they're allowed to do without permission. So they have to take it to their.
So there's no question in your mind about those that are out there that all of them will eventually come in?
I do think that all of the boards will come in. All of the private providers, I'm not so sure. There's some that are really little that may not. I think there's one here that probably still has $9. I think that there may be a handful of those that may not ask for the funding.
So what happens in a case like that?
I could reach out to them and ask them to submit an attestation for any of those that are under 1,000, because that's all they need to do is to send in a signed attestation. For anything over 1,000, I could reach out to the executive directors or the CEOs of the agency and ask them to submit a plan.
Well, that would only be necessary if we still had money left over we wanted to spend. We may run out of money, Ed. So we may not want to encourage people to submit that don't want to submit or don't need to. Well, we don't really need to do that anyway. If they don't want to submit or don't need to, then they don't need to.
What's the overall money that we have to spend that
It was
represents?
5 million, 5 million for.
That's just what we approved to spend. It don't mean we have to spend it.
Right.
We just didn't want any comeback later on and say, well, you did not do this, you did not do that, or the other.
No, I mean, I think that as far as I can tell, we do a very good job of letting people know what's out there and what's available. And if they want to pick us up on it, they can. But I mean,
They have received multiple emails, multiple.
it'd be a positive thing if we did not have to spend all the money that we allocated for something like that. It wouldn't be negative.
Yeah. I'm sure we found another way to spend it if they
Right.
didn't want to take it up. Take it from
Right,
us. Yes.
maybe we could spend it directly on an individual that needs something. That would be nice.
All right. Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda is Courtney Crosby, internal audit updates.
Thank you. I'll start with an update on our agreed upon procedures reports. So we're continuing to review the reports that have come in. The deadline for the 2021 reports for the boards was October 31st. We've received reports for all the boards, including those that were granted extensions. Of the 40 reports that we've received, the review is complete for 16 and 23 are in process. We've received 2021 reports on agreed upon procedures from all of the private providers with June 30 year ends. There are 9 of those. And the reports for private providers with September 30 year ends were due on January 31st. We've received 2 of the 3 with 1 being late. And the review is complete for 3 of the private providers. So our 2021 contract reductions are currently at $27,200. And I indicated at the commission meeting in February that is trending upwards. So in 2020, the contract reductions were at $20,300 and $19,100 in 2019. So in addition to the review of the agreed upon procedures, we've been prioritizing follow-up procedures. So we've initiated follow-up procedures with 5 of the providers. The field work is complete for 2 providers, and it's underway for 3 additional providers. So we're nearing the end of the quarter. So we'll update the tracking report for the follow-up procedures that we've completed since January, and a copy will be distributed to all of the commissioners in early April. So may I answer any questions?
No, I don't have any. Barry?
For those follow-up, for that follow-up information we're doing, is there a person who's primarily assigned to that only?
So the individual auditor who completed the initial audit, if they're still here, we've had a little bit of turnover. They're the ones that are completing the follow-up procedures just because they're familiar with the provider and they're familiar with the work that was done on the initial engagement. And for the ones where the auditor is no longer here, we're spreading that out amongst the audit team.
The 23 left, you comfortable with that number? I mean, all 23 coming in?
So they're here, we're just still in the process of reviewing them. So a lot of times there may be an additional letter that they're required to send that talks about, any other CPA services that are provided, or it could just be that the CPA read the directive and complied with it. So we're just missing one little piece of information, or we have a question about something in the report. So we just haven't checked all the boxes yet and haven't sent that completion letter yet, but they are underway.
All right. Okay, well, I will move on if no one else has any other questions for Courtney. Thank you for the update. All right. Okay, so
Thank you, ma'am.
yep, our new CFO, Tracy Hunt, is next on our agenda. And,
Can I say something before she starts, please?
okay, go ahead.
I think I'm echoing for somebody. I mean, it's probably hard enough to hear my voice as it is. And it's probably, I probably came through a little louder than I meant to earlier when I was talking about our alarm system thing, because I'm echoing and I'm not exactly sure why that is. And so somebody with IT might want to look into that. I think I'm echoing. Aren't I echoing in there?
Not in here, you're not.
Out there, not in here.
Yeah, you must.
Okay, good. All right. Well, that's fine. As long as it's not in there, that's all that matters.
Yeah, no, you sound
Since
clear.
I can't be there, I'm sorry, so I'm not echoing, but that's good.
All right,
Go ahead.
okay. Tracy.
Hey, good afternoon. The first thing under my update is talking about a financial statement audit request. So what that is a request we would like to bring in an outside firm to come do an audit. This is a best practice whenever you have a switch over with like a CFO, but in this case, we also have a new director as well. And we'd like to get y'all's guidance on if we can proceed with doing so or if we need to take it to full committee. But we would like to ask and request of you to consider it.
I think it would be a good practice. I think it's a good practice to do that. We actually attempted to look into that between another transition that we had at one point. And so I'm glad that you are behind doing this because I think it would probably be prudent to do this for many reasons. But Barry, you have any thoughts on that for Tracy or questions, I guess? Because I've spoken to Tracy about this already, so I just want to make sure that you and Ned are good with what she's.
I'm not opposed to it. I just wonder how extensive we're going to try to get, because with an agency of our size, I think you could find hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that were not spent properly, as I'm sure we'll find soon because we have a new CFO now. So I'm sure we're going to find money that was not spent the way we intended it to be spent. And so I guess I would wonder, can you ask for different, what kind of audit are you asking for so that we know how extensive we're going to try to get, and if we're not, and how much money would be the amount they would have to bring to our attention with an agency of this size?
Right, to be audited. So what would the cost be?
From
Not
what
necessarily talking about the cost of the audit. I'm talking about what they would have to bring up before us, and of course the cost of the audit's another thing. So because that depends on what audit we do. How much it costs is going to depend on which audit you do, I guess.
Well, from what I can understand, best practices says, and like I said, I'm just going on my husband being an accountant and government accountant. What we're asking for is a financial statement audit. There hasn't been one since 2015. 2015, that's a significant amount of time not to have done any baseline auditing outside of our agency. Especially with the changeover that we have seen, I think it's in our best interest and in the best interest of our new executive team here at DDSM to at least go back and take a look. I think this is a first look, am I correct? And then if we see things that need to be looked at beyond that, then we go to the next step. Am I correct, Tracy?
Correct. And also it's an opportunity for them to give us what we're doing maybe as a best practice. That's really important for, me coming in and hearing the things that we're doing well. And if they have something that they want us to do differently or that could help us be more efficient, well, then that just makes my day. So I'm looking at this as a total opportunity to just look at, what we're doing here. And if they can, dig into a couple of things and tell us, yes, that's perfect, y'all are doing that. In some cases, they may say, hey, you don't actually need to do this step. That's a little bit too much. So if we can help people with resources and be more efficient, I'm all for it. And I'm hoping that this is something we can do.
You just defined baseline, and I'm in agreement, Madam Chair.
This is step one.
Yes.
And this is something that I felt needed to be done for over a year. I mean, obviously we ran into some roadblocks in the past.
Yeah.
We aren't sure why we ran into those roadblocks, but Tracy agrees with us that it is time to move forward with that step.
There's actually a couple of things relating to the audit that I would like to bring up, not today, but at another time with our CFO about what I think, a couple of things I think needs to be looked into, as you call it. And so before we decide what we're gonna do about that exactly, I'd like have a few minute conversation with you to explain to you what I'm thinking of.
Yes, sir. Sure, absolutely.
I think we should definitely move ahead with having her go ahead and proceed to find a person to do the audit, or you put an RFP on that, or how does that work?
Well, it's actually already approved through the state. They will give
Okay.
us a few firms to choose from
Okay.
that they've deemed that are appropriate to do a financial statement audit.
Okay.
And, you know, of this size agency, they'll give us a quote, but that also the state auditor's office will have to approve as well what they give us as a quote.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, you know, if it's gonna be 25,000 to 50,000, you know, depending on the agency size. So
Okay.
I don't have that yet, because I didn't want to make any steps or proceed and get that kind of information if it wasn't something that would be well received. So this was just to talk to you guys today about it.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I think, we can vote on it and take it to the commission, for a full commission vote.
It really does, it
It
really
comes
would be best to, it might be best to bring it to the commission whenever we have a price on how much it would be and all that. So we just need to I think we just need to make a motion and a second to proceed to get all the information necessary for the commission to vote at another date.
Sure. That sounds like a great plan.
All right, so who wants to make that motion?
Barry just made.
So
it.
I just did.
I'll second.
Okay, all right. Okay, so, the motion is approved to proceed with looking into,
And I will definitely get back with you guys at full commission with some more details. Thank you for letting me continue that.
Who's taking minutes?
today, who's taking minutes?
Yeah.
Candace? No,
Kimberly is.
Charlie.
Kimberly's back there.
Just, you have my motion down correctly, Kimberly, you think?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure. All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. The next items are all just to give y'all an update on what we're working on.
Okay.
So I don't need any actions, but I just want to make you aware. And the first thing talks about advances to the board's discussion. So from my understanding, there's been some things that we may have had to talk with boards and give them funding where when their funding comes in or we have an agreement for them to give us and reimburse that amount back. So what I'm trying to do is work with the staff here, and they have been great. Debbie has just been fantastic with working with me on this. We're going to get a report together for you guys and show you maybe like a 10-year history of what's happened and if we've had to, you know, have any repayments back from certain boards. But wanted to make you aware that we were pulling that as a project, and that will be on the next agenda with some more information.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And then it sort of pivots into the next topic of conversation. This is something I believe all of you are very familiar with from a past meeting, but there has been discussions about having some financial assistance training. And Dr. Fry has been very supportive of bringing this item today and wanting to keep it on the agenda. We are actually going to meet with a couple of state vendors tomorrow just to hear from them what kind of training they offer. And so once we get that kind of information back, we want to bring that back to you guys as well and tell you what they're capable of doing and see if there's another step with maybe being able to provide financial assistance to the boards in the future.
All right. So is the training for their board employees or their board of directors?
So it looks to be, from what I've been, I guess, discovering and talking with people, it's for everybody. It's for the whole programmatic and financial sides of these boards. And it's going to help them look at what they're doing and maybe can let them see some things that they haven't seen and what reflects on how their financials happen. And we all know that having beds filled and having staff filled equals to a lot of success sometimes, but if one of those things isn't filled, then it can cause a little bit of a bubble, and we need to be able to make sure everybody understands what happens when something like that does happen, and if there's a way that they can go one way or another that will help with their financials. This team, or the team that we're going to talk to is gonna let us know what they're capable of doing with metrics and goals, and just trying to give them an outline of how they can revamp things if needed, or let them know if they're doing a great job and use them as the poster for everybody else. All right. Okay.
Okay, well, you need to be aware that Chris Clark did a lot of training with the boards, finance directors, or tried to do some training with them.
Yes,
And
sir.
we need to know what training they had and what needs to go beyond what they did. So you need to do some investigating to see exactly what trainings he did, because he tried to do a lot of training for the short time he was here, from what I understand, and did have some training. I don't know how much he had exactly, but he did have some, and wasn't here long enough to do a lot of training, but they did some. And so you need to figure out what they did and who they used and that sort of thing, because they may be helpful in some way in that regard too. But that was particularly for finance directors.
Okay.
But that's a lot of that's obviously a lot of our problem and a lot of what we deal with. But the other thing, of course, is executive directors. You'd be surprised. It surprises me how long some of these executive directors have been here and claim they don't have training, or claim they need more training and all that, which sometimes I think it's just go ahead.
All right, so next item, nurses.
The next item we've got on the list is the nurses' rates. And this has, I think, been a topic for a little while, but now with some prices going up, it became something that we really had to talk through last week. And the nurses' rate, and Janet, I went to write down the old rate, but was it 32 and 40, or is it 48? You know off the top of your head?
40.
So our old rate was 32 and 40. And we did research. Dr. Frost said to go and pull, all these other state agencies and look to see where they were. And we found out we were so far off the mark, and that we needed to submit something on our fixed price to try to get them where we can actually have nurses retained. Because of course, if we're not paying the rates that are needed, the companies aren't going to send the nurses to the facilities. So after a lot of discussion, the new rates are now 80 and 68, which is a little bit higher than the Department of Mental Health. Their rates for an RN is 75 and an LPN is 60. But like at the Department of Corrections and Juvenile Justice, they were at 85 and 75. So that puts us a little bit more competitive, and we just wanted to make y'all aware that that was a rate change we had to do in order to maintain staffing levels and to keep our services moving on. Does anybody have any questions about that item?
What did you say we were currently paying, and what do you think we should be paying again? We'll say that again.
32 for LPN and 40, and now it's at 80 and 68.
So you're nearly doubling what we paid.
Correct.
To stay competitive.
Well, we were paying the COVID rates, which was a lot more. So actually the COVID rates did put them at like 54 and 40. So it was a little bit higher, but even our COVID rates were way off the mark. And so the nursing services were not able to provide services to us at that rate any longer, of course, with gas and different things going up. So we were able to submit that. Candace has submitted that information on, and we're going to keep continuing to provide good services and have those nurses on call for us. Does anybody have any other questions? The last item is sale of proceeds. And this is another project that we're doing to research for you guys, and we're going to get back with you. And we're going to work with engineering and Candace and make sure that we have all the properties identified that we were looking at trying to, make sure if we needed to sell or where they were. This was an item agenda before. And so we want to be able to give y'all an update on those. And so we want to let you know we're working on that, and I'm doing some research, and they're going to work with me to have that information at the next meeting as well.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, next item on our agenda is Janet Priest is going to be talking about amending contract with Center for Disability Resources for USC School of Medicine.
So good afternoon. I'm actually not going to ask for a contract amendment today.
Okay.
I did include the current contract so that you're aware of what it says. What I'm going to talk to you about actually is in anticipation of a July 1st contract amendment with the Center for Disability Resources, specifically about positive behavior support training. Okay. Positive behavior support training is a research-based training strategy where staff, supervisors on the floor in a residential setting are taught the strategies that, when used, will increase quality of life and decrease challenging behaviors. So this is all research-based. It is not about how to write a behavior support plan, if you're familiar at all with those, but it is focused on the strategies that the staff employ when they're interacting with people. So what the strategies are attempting to do is to create a very respectful environment between the person who lives there and the staff. Because if both are equally respecting each other, then a lot of those behaviors go away. So we're getting, you might want to think that sometimes it's an issue of the staff thinking they have control versus the staff being there to support. So this teaches those kinds of strategies and teaches the staff how to employ those. A little bit of background about positive behavior supports. It is a curriculum that is sold by the by AAIDD. I can't say what that means right now. So my eyes go up. American Association on for Individuals with Intellectual Disability. Anyway, I messed that up.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Very good, very
it is a
good.
curriculum that's sold by AAIDD and published now by AAIDD. It was created in the 90s for DDSN. So it was originally created for DDSN. AAIDD sells those curriculum online. It's about $395, and the royalties of the sale go to DDSN, not to the authors. So this is something that was created by the agency and used by the agency for a very long period of time. We do still get the royalties. Nancy tells me it's about $22,000 so far, but it's an evidence-based curriculum used. So the training itself is a competency-based training. So the staff who participate, and we start with supervisors. There's a supervisor's course. And in the supervisor's course, the instructors teach content, and then the participants have to demonstrate that competency in the skill. Okay, so that is what's done in kind of the classroom. So it's 4 classrooms and 4 classroom days of instruction. The last day of instruction is on the job. So the instructor goes to where the student, the learner, is on the job and observes them actually implementing the skills that were taught, right? So in order to successfully pass this class, you have to do the 4 days of instruction, and you have to have the on-the-job observation by the instructor. So that really tightens it up to ensure that it's not just passing a written test, it is the demonstration of the skill in the classroom, in front of the instructors, and on their job and with their folks. So there are about 25 modules in all that are taught. I can give you some information on each of those topics if you want to know. The instructors are there with the participants, having them engage. So I said that DDSN's used this for a long time, and over the time between the late 90s when the curriculum was first established until 2018 or 19 when the contract for this training was ended, every DSN board, every regional center, and all the qualified providers that were engaged at the time had some engagement with positive behavior support. about 1,300 supervisors across the state at the time or throughout the course of the training had participated in the training. And the satisfaction surveys from the training yielded a 99% positive, recommend this training to anyone. So it's good stuff. I mean, it really truly is good stuff. Unfortunately, the data suggests that a refresher course is required for participants about every 2 years. So, you know, I'm not really sure that we have anyone out there anymore who is really trained and up to snuff, so to speak, on positive behavior support. So we really want to reinstitute this training for several reasons. Number one, it's great training. It's great training for anyone. And it is not just directed at providers who support people with very challenging behaviors. It is directed at everyone. These are skills that I've been through parts of it. I've not successfully completed it. But these are skills that any person could take and use in their everyday life, but it's particularly important when you're in a residential setting or in a day program and you're dealing with people with disabilities and trying to ensure that there aren't control issues. It helps you set up environments to avoid problem behavior, challenging behavior also. So another point to raise is that in 2017, DDSN had a fixed price bid where we were looking for qualified providers for intensive support, residential rehabilitation, and specialized family homes. Those providers provided the kinds of services that are now high management in the residential tier and the CTH tier 4. But when those fixed price bids were written, having positive behavior support training was criteria for the provider. So they were required, in accordance with the fixed price bid, to have that training. There's no place to get it if DDSN is not offering it. So in order for those providers to meet the criteria, they would have to be trained. When we went to the residential tiers, the information about the criteria for those providers was considered as part of the rate development. So those providers should have the positive behavior support training. So again, the supervisors, historically, when DDSN has offered this training, there are two kinds of courses that are offered. One is a course to supervisors. That's the big one, where the supervisors, meaning someone who works for the residential rehabilitation provider or a day program as a supervisor, is being trained. The expectation is that supervisor takes it back and models behavior for staff and corrects staff behavior so that they too are getting in line with positive behavior support and the strategies that are taught. The second course that we offer is a train the trainer course. So we will train supervisors who have successfully completed the course to be a trainer in their own agency. So they're not always coming back to us. So that's kind of the way it historically has been structured. We have reached out for the Center for Disability Resources for this training. They're the ones that have always done it in the past. The people who do it absolutely are experts. There are no others. They're experts. I don't know how else to say. They're the ones to do it. They're
not the only people that can provide it though, right?
I don't know of any others. Who provide it.
The Center for?
The Center for Disability Resources is the University Center for Excellence at the University of South Carolina School of Medicine.
Okay.
The approximate cost for rolling it out for 1 year and we're talking about 5 to 6 supervisors courses and about 4 or 5 train the trainer courses is around $150,000. None of this could roll out, even if you said, not that I'm asking you to, but even if you said, yes, indeed, go forth and do it, there's no way that that could be implemented before July 1. But again, in order for it to move forward on July 1st, if the contract were to be amended, then there's some ramp up time that would be needed that perhaps could be done now with just getting things aligned in order to move forward on July 1st.
So what are they currently doing for us under this contract?
I think they are doing a research library, and we contract for 1 staff person with expertise in employment.
So this would be the first time that we would be using them for this service, or?
No, that we have historically contracted through the university, through CDR for this training. In fact, we have always contracted with CDR.
And
For
who
this
would
training.
be taking this training? Would it be just our regional center staff, or would it be the staff at all of our CTF boards? Who would take this?
So what we would do is we would likely prioritize providers who deliver services that we call high management.
Okay.
And then we would invite those providers to designate supervisory staff. So think house manager, residential coordinator kinds of people. Those would be the people who would sit in the seats for the training.
And how extensive would this training be? Like, how long would it last?
So the supervisor's course, is 4 days of classroom instruction, which is really a little bit of instruction, a lot of demonstration, and a lot of practicing. So it's a very physical, hands-on kind of training. On top of that, there is 1 day where the instructor meets the student, the supervisor, on their job and observes them implementing the skills that they learned in training or utilizing the skills that they learned in training. So it's 5 days total for the supervisor's course. The trainer's course is a day and a half of instruction and practice. So again, they are teaching a trainer how to do this training for the provider agency and other staff in the provider agency. So they spend a day and a half of instruction. During that time, they're actually doing training to the other participants in the course. And then there is another day when the instructor goes and sits while the newly minted trainer delivers training. So they are not certified until they are observed actually delivering training in their agency.
I just wanted to clarify because it was a lot of great information, but to your question, so we have a current contract. That contract is a very scaled down version of what it used to be. I think we were contracting with CDR to provide this training as well as some other supports and services. And that contract was narrowed significantly in 2000, was it 18 or 17?
It was 18 or 19.
Okay. So past director had a different vision, and with the narrowing of that contract, this training for positive behavioral supports was ceased. So that's what Janet was describing, that even for those who had been in the trainer, it has now been so long that they're due for a refresh. And I have personally heard from multiple boards how great this training is, and I suspect that you all have heard it as well. There is a large outcry for more training when it comes to behavioral support. So we are bringing this to you in reaction to listening to that, and after being here a little bit and getting to evaluate things that the programs we offer. So I wanted to explain that it is the same entity, and that's why Janet is describing. They've helped author, they've done the training before, and that's why we bring it back to say we'd like to take the same contract and increase it for this one service.
Yeah. And I do know that this is a much needed program for providers so that they can safely manage individuals that we serve that do have some high behavioral needs. So I look forward to seeing the contract when it's drafted, because this is not the contract yet. But how many people potentially will be served in this training for $150,000? Like, what would be what would we get for that? I know you said there'll be 5 to 6 days and a week
So I
of
think
this and that, but how many people?
With the supervisor's course, if I'm remembering correctly, and of course, I didn't bring it with me.
It's okay, we're not voting on it right now.
We're talking about 5 to 6 supervisor courses. And I think that it's 20 people per session. So that would be 100 to 120. And the trainer courses are smaller. And we were guessing that we would do 4 or 5 of the trainer with, I think it's 10 people in each.
Is that going to be adequate to hit the number of people that care for people with behavioral issues in our system?
That's a bit of a loaded question, because if it were up to me, we would quadruple it and make everybody come tomorrow, right? Just because of the value that has been realized from the training.
Yeah, I know. So if we need to do more training
Right.
and reach more people, this would be the time to talk about that.
Right, and I think that, I can certainly have a discussion with CDR to see what they might be willing to do more sessions. It is it's somewhat of a heavy lift on the administration side of it, with scheduling the classes and getting them there. When the agency supported this effort before, it was the desire of provider agencies who were sending staff that it not be 4 consecutive days of training. So it's once a week so that, you're not pulling a staff person out for 4 consecutive days. So it works that way, and it's a matter of getting it scheduled, making sure they're committed, following up, and then the heavy lift with the on-the-job skill check.
Robin, I'll tell you, I just kind of sat here and did the numbers, just reading them out. It comes up to 170 people. Divide that 162.48 by that, and it's only $955 per person. It's very hard to get any kind of training for any period of time.
Yeah.
That cheap. I mean, and especially something that's going to last 5 days worth of training for one person. That's a very reasonable. That's a very reasonable request. Financially is what I'm looking at.
So I would request an idea of how many people need this training and how many people will be getting the training, you know, in terms of like what we're buying. And then just looking at what that difference is so that we can maybe prepare and plan for the next year where we can do more and find, because this is one of the things we hear the most from the providers. I mean, the need for training to deal and support high needs individuals, especially since they're caring for many more of those folks today than they even were 10 years ago.
Correct.
So we have
This training
got
is-
to do more for them, for our providers.
Right, I agree, and this
I
training
know you
is
know
really
that.
great.
Yeah.
Not just for those with high needs, but for everyone, and it's really great at avoiding. I mean, it teaches skills to even avoid the challenging behavior, so it's not teaching skills on how to react to a challenging behavior, but to avoid it altogether,
Yes, the
which is
antecedent.
even better.
The antecedent, like,
Exactly.
before it
We can
happens,
see it coming,
it's-
we can change the environment, we can change a lot of things. So,
Yeah, and I think, you know, we're not gonna see a decrease over in our population of behavioral challenges. I think it's only probably gonna grow, unless something significantly changes. And a lot would have to make those numbers go the opposite way. So, you know, I think we need to plan as an agency to do more every year on this topic, as much as we can do. Feasibly affordable types of expenses, you know, to fill the need and to help support our providers that desperately need this training. So, Barry, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think we need to focus on training the trainers as much as we possibly can, because obviously that would get more people to be able to train other people within our own agency. And it would be nice to be able to eventually get to the point to where we could have a trainer within our agency that could do this, because this sounds like the kind of training we need. But the biggest one of the reasons I would think this training would be beneficial, and I hope it would be beneficial for this purpose, and I'd like to know, is if somebody had this, if a board had this training, could they no longer give the excuse that they can't take a person off the critical needs list because they're not trained?
No, it's their prerogative to say no to whoever they don't.
I know it's their prerogative to say no, but I'm saying if they were trained for this purpose, couldn't we say you've been trained now, and so you have less of an excuse not to take somebody off the critical needs list because you've been trained?
No, because
That's
they
what we get now.
can handle it. If they don't, it takes more than just behavioral training. It takes the nursing staff to also be able to handle
And the
that.
DSP staff and.
Yeah.
I do think that there are some providers that if they embrace the training throughout the agency, because it's one thing to send one supervisor, it's another thing to embrace it throughout the agency. If they embrace it throughout the agency, I think that they will be more comfortable supporting all kinds of people with all kinds of needs. And that's about as diplomatically as I can say that.
Because ultimately the point is to get more people served and to get people off this, get more people served in general and to get them served properly. But we have a big problem with the critical needs list not being served because people say they can't serve them. And so maybe that wouldn't be this training, maybe that'd be another training, but we need to focus on what kind of training people need and what their situation is to be able to get people off this critical needs list and off of our waiting list in general and on and on.
Right.
And so they can no longer say, well, we don't have the training, we can't do this, we don't have the training, let's use excuses. And so, and of course, financially, it wouldn't be as much as it used to be because they get paid fee for service. But the point is, we do need to provide them the training so they cannot use that as an excuse as much anymore.
Well, we need to provide the training because they've asked for it as well. So that's important.
Well, it goes hand in hand.
Challenges.
It goes hand in hand, but yes.
Thing that they don't want to do, and they, you know, like you said, though, it needs to be adopted throughout the agency or the board. I guess in this case would be maybe a board.
Residential provider,
Yeah,
but.
but it needs to be adopted system-wide, and, valued system-wide, so more people know it and are comfortable using it and supporting more people, hopefully, because they feel more empowered to do their job, the
And
best way they can.
To the point of focusing on training the trainer, that's certainly what we want to do, but one of the criteria for
Okay,
being
right back
in
to
the
my
train the trainer class is that you've successfully completed the supervisor's training. So that's the first, once you've done that, then you can be a trainer. So we have to get those supervisors trained first, let them implement, be successful, and then they can come and become a trainer.
All right.
So I'm not exactly sure what I'm asking for. But what I'm hearing is that I can move forward on a soft ramp up, and we'll bring some information and a contract amendment for June.
Yes, that would be good.
That'd be great.
Yeah, the sooner we can do that, the better, since it's really critical, a critical need that we need to fill, and it would be great if we could act on it sooner rather than later. All right, I believe that was the last item on today's agenda, so, I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Great. All right, we are adjourning our Finance and Audit Committee meeting at 4:41. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.